Well, tonight, as federal officials try to piece together what caused that fiery wreck on a set of train tracks Tuesday night in Valhalla, families impacted by the tragedy, they're trying to pick up the pieces. 6 people, they were killed after a Metro North train allegedly hit an SUV that was on the tracks at the railroad crossing. 5 train passengers killed along with the driver of that SUV. And witnesses told us that the crossing signals appeared to be working properly and that the driver of the vehicle, instead of backing up, went forward after the gate hit her car. Metro North has set up a family assistance center for those impacted by the crash. And some wonder, though, what could be coming down the pike from Metro North, among other fronts, on the legal front. This is the railroad still faces dozens of lawsuits following the derailment that happened back in the Bronx in 2013. Authorities say the train ran off the tracks and crashed after the train's engineer dozed off. I want to bring in our legal panel. We're going to talk about this and many other subjects. Jim Soros, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, lecturing at New York Law School and also visiting professor at the University of Birmingham in England. He'll be taking all of us there on a road trip soon. Mayo Bartlett, attorney and former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. Mark Furnish, professor of Brooklyn Law, and he's also argued before the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll be talking about an interesting case going up to the High Court as well. And Jimmy, I'll start with you, which is how much, because, and I did the preface in the last segment with the Assemblyman, and I want to conflate the two cases here because it certainly seemed that there was a lot of human error on the part of the driver, at least at first blush, the driver of the vehicle, not of the train. The backstory of Metro North, and I will tell you of lawmakers, whether it be Senator Blumenthal in Connecticut, Senator Schumer, and others, but that have been focusing on the troubled rail system, especially with the safety record, et cetera. Does that play into what happened today at all in terms of forecasting potential safety risks, even if there was an operator error?
Absolutely. You've got operator error and you have a systemic error. And you know, I will quote my friend Mayo here, who we were talking about it before. You don't have a driver error here. You've got a situation where you've got these 2 pieces of wood that come down, and it is, to me, foreseeable that a child, a tree, a person can find their way between those. When I'm driving my car and I have it on cruise control and there's a car 50 feet or 100 feet ahead of me, it automatically senses it and stops. So why don't we have sensors in the system where it'll shut it down if there's a tree there, if there's a person there, if there's anything on those tracks? So, you know, Metro North has an obligation not only to prevent these type of system situations, but also the driver situations. So I think they have a problem, and this history is certainly going to pile up against them.
Mark, when I was just talking to someone, 2 of his constituents to this point, and one would think logically very possibly more, they lost their lives. On an overly simplistic way, what should from a legal standpoint, the expectation of safety be for a passenger that gets on the train? And even if it's mitigating factors from something outside, like a car that should never have been on the train tracks, does a passenger have not only a legal expectation, but also civil opportunities, even if the train operator did nothing wrong?
Well, the expectation is relative. I mean, when you're going on a commuter train on a daily basis and you're a temporary passenger on the train, I actually was thinking about this very question and reading about it. It's not like the safety briefing that you get on an airplane. You're not going to be on there for an extended duration of time. And candidly, I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. Think about the vast number of trains that go and the number of people who can get on the tracks, like Jimmy said, and the number of things that can go wrong with human error. And I read somewhere today that somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 of these accidents happen around the country every day, and we don't hear about them. In this area, when it happens, candidly, it's an aberration, and you hear about it and you're stunned. So I don't know what the expectation is, but it's not like when you're getting on an airplane. It's more like when you're getting into a cab.
Well, I would think the expectation is that Metro North or any other carrier takes reasonable steps to make sure that people are safe. And when you look at where we are today, we as a nation have been woefully insufficient in terms of investing in infrastructure. And this is just a case in point there, where we are operating basically in the 50s and 60s. Everywhere else, if you look at any of our European counterparts or any of our Asian counterparts that are developed nations, they have bullet trains that, I mean, really, we wouldn't even be discussing this. We don't spend a nominal amount of money to make sure that we have the sensors. And as we were talking before, look, if you simply had a kill switch, it should be something that gives the train enough time where power is cut to that vehicle so that it doesn't continue. Even if it had slowed it to a lesser speed, chances are that third rail is not going to go up and into that vehicle.
Well, so that's also another question, Mayo, right? The third rail, which is depending literally on geography, it's either above or it's on the track level. And that, I would think, is also a mitigating factor in this conversation, right? Absolutely. In terms of, I mean, there's one thing with hitting the car, but it was the third rail that at least, and I'm not trying to be an amateur investigator, it does seem that that's what caused the massive fire in the car and literally ripping through. And as we understand from, unfortunately, some of the eyewitness accounts here, when we spoke to the county executive, it was a really horrific scene inside that front car.
To Mayo's point, it seems like it's not only Europe, it seems like in our particular area, more than any other area, we have tremendous difficulty getting infrastructure built. You know, I grew up in Long Island, which is a train culture like this one. For most of my childhood, the tracks weren't even electrified going from Huntington out to the Hamptons. It took into the 90s for them to get double-decker Long Island Railroad trains by the same MTA that's running these trains. And the point is, who knows with their budget whether they have the most modern equipment or not? It's a budgetary issue.
But you have to stop and say that, you know, we have to move away from the culture of everything being a tax cut, that all taxes are bad, because all taxes are not bad. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of waste and that should be cut out. But when you start talking about the things that we do need, we should be willing to pay for those things. Well, I can tell you from
the political level, which I've dealt with a lot of the folks here, it's going to be an uphill fight to get that proposal by the president from a major infrastructure thing done. However, we have seen when there are singular moments here that maybe instead of an omnibus bill, there'll be something more directed to rail safety or whatever else, so we'll follow that. Okay. This next conversation was going to be the first debate I had with these guys because it's really dominated headlines. And for somebody who's not the non-attorney at the table, for the life of me, I don't understand how there isn't more criminal or at least civil exposure for some of these parents. I'm talking about the debate over measles vaccinations here, and it is a debate that's taken the country by storm. Should parents who refuse to vaccinate their kids be held liable in any way if their kids get somebody else's children sick? Our legal panel will weigh in on that and much more when we return.